All right, everybody, welcome to Tesla Today. The main topic today is Tesla Giga Shanghai. What's happening in China? We know that China is very important for Tesla. We're actually seeing record production and deliveries, even despite the slowdown. We've got peak oil now. We're going to show you some reports on that. Let's talk about what's going to happen in Q4 and Q1 of next year. We've got Brian White joining us. Brian is a regular on the show. He's got his own YouTube channel called MyTeslaWeekend. And I'm telling you, he is one of my best sought out guests all the time because every show is a banger. He shares so much great information. Follow him on YouTube at MyTeslaWeekend. Welcome, Brian.
So awesome to be here. What an intro. Oh, wow.
I need to give you better intros because you're just so good.
Sometimes I'm learning so much about myself.
I take you for granted. And he's funny. That's why I laugh so much. All right, let's talk China. So everybody has been saying that there's going to be a slowdown in Q3 because they're revamping the production lines. And yet we got news and we're hearing that its sales seems to be going strong. Here's news that 17,000 Teslas were insured in China last week. Very strong result. This was the fourth best week of the year so far. Tesla is well on its way to having a record quarter in China. Brian, what's going on? Why is China still doing incredibly well? Not that I'm complaining.
Isn't that crazy? There's always this prediction of imminent doom and gloom, and somehow it just never materializes. Well, this time we had a little bit more news. It was Elon himself saying this quarter is probably not going to be a record. Well, if you're going to do the new Highland, which you are, you're going to have to retool the lines. You're going to have to take them down. We saw when they redid the Models S and X, it was supposed to be 2 weeks. The Model S took months. The Model X took a year. And that wasn't just a lesson for us. That was a lesson for them. And so they're doing things differently. And my prediction early on was they're not going to take down all the lines. At most, they'll take down one. They'll do as much as they can without taking the line down at all. And when it comes time, they'll just do one line instead of two. So if you've got two lines running at about 80% capacity and you shut one of them down, you can still have one line running at 100% capacity. So that doesn't get you quite the volume, but it gets you close. And what we're seeing is big numbers still coming out, even though they're working on it. And the slowdown just hasn't appeared yet. So it remains my theory that as the Highland ramps, they're going to be still producing some of the older model on the existing line until it catches up, because those will be sold at today's prices rather than the refresh price. And then you've also got there's also the other reason you're seeing still big numbers is because it looks like they keep pushing out the changeover date. Until Fremont is ready, they don't want to Osborne themselves by having Shanghai going full production 2 weeks before Fremont, a month before Fremont. So we were expecting the changeover to happen weeks ago, maybe even a month ago, and it still hasn't happened. Because I think they really want to do both factories at the same time.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. People have been saying that. So we're now in the second month of, Q3, right? July and August.
Right.
So you think that, where do you think they are? They've already completed the changeover, but they're just slowing it down, or what
so validation appears done, but we're still seeing road testing, which tells me we might have another week to go before they're confident it's time to make the switch. Okay. We just don't know the timeline inside the factory. I don't have sources at Fremont or Shanghai. So that's a bit of a blind spot for me. And the sources I have at other factories have gotten a bit more tight-lipped since the firings in Texas. And I've told them as much. I've said, I don't want any information that's going to get you fired. It's not worth it. Don't tell me something that'll cost you your career if in a week and a half we're going to find out anyway. So yeah, I think we could still see that changeover begin in earnest in as little as a week or two.
Okay. And then what is your expectation for Q4? So we know that Q3 may be a break even, maybe a little if we're very lucky. It depends on what happens in a month.
Yeah.
But if they're slowing it down for Fremont, more likely it's going to be break even Q3. What are you expecting for Q4?
So to finish on Q3, Elon was saying total production could be down. But remember, Model Y is their best seller, and that's unaffected by this. Production at Texas and Berlin still have room to ramp on the Model Y. They could offset some of that gap, but I haven't seen parts orders for Texas that would indicate that they have yet increased production beyond 3,450 units a week. That could have happened, and I didn't hear about it, but it doesn't appear in the pipeline just yet. So Model Y is not going to be increasing significantly. Now, what's going to happen in Q4? I believe both Fremont and Shanghai will be well into their ramps at that point. And that, again, one of the lines may still be running older models to sell, especially to fleets. I'm sure Hertz would love to buy a bunch of them. Even if Tesla has to compress the margin a bit, they can make it up on the refresh model just to get them out the door, just to keep units moving. So in Q4, I do think Model 3 production in Fremont and Berlin and Shanghai will be lower than they are in Q3, but that people still want cars. The company is still growing, whether or not you're making the exact model they want. And the Model Y is not a huge stretch from the Model 3. They could offset the downtime a bit in production that way. Now in Shanghai, they're a bit maxed out in terms of capacity. They can always squeeze 1 or 2 more % out, but they can't. If you're losing 10% production from the factory, just because of Model 3, you're not going to be able to make it up just on Model Y. The factory's not big enough. In Fremont, same situation, but then you've got, for the U.S. market, you've got Texas can fill some of the gap, and especially in China, you could export fewer Ys and have Berlin making more of their own for the European market. So there's room to make it up a bit there.
All right, but tell me about what's happening with the economy, right? We know that this is high ticket value items, these cars. In the U.S., we're actually seeing good signs. Job reports came down, and yay, there's less jobs, which means
Right.
that the chances of a pivot in next year is actually much higher now. So things are still looking good here in the U.S. People are feeling good about the economy again. But in China, we just reported very recently that there's massive deflation that's happening, and they're kind of concerned. So what did you kind of have any kind of sense of what's happening to the China market for the China sales themselves of the Tesla cars?
When the market is bad, you still buy milk and bread. Tesla has increasingly become the milk and bread brand. When you look through the downtimes during lockdown, for example, Tesla was the only company not only still producing but still growing, and that made it a lot. It differentiated them in the market. We may see Q1 is always historically weak. Q1 also is when we're going to have Chinese New Year out in February. They've got a big holiday. And while the factory manages to still produce great numbers for the quarter and does some limited production during that time, very limited, that also is a time when delivery centers are not delivering, when buyers are not out buying. And so we may see less than exciting numbers for Tesla China for Q4 and Q1, but those things shouldn't apply as much. Now, as to the greater economy, the other thing to consider is if things improve in the US, rates will come down. And as US rates go, so go world rates. So that would improve the opportunity for buyers to secure financing at a price they think is reasonable.
Yeah.
And that would also give them a little bit more buying power. So an extra, $30 a month may not seem like much, but it's still in your head psychologically. There is a difference between $499 and $519.
Yeah, in fact, actually, China did cut rates. They already did that. So that's actually good news for the buyers there. So I saw you did a video this morning on the Cybertruck, and you're comparing the kind of what you the new videos with the old videos, just looking at changes, small changes, big cosmetic changes. I was going to ask you about Highland in China. Are you expecting that they're going to have different styling, maybe, or some differences between the China and the Highland produced in China versus the one in Fremont? I mean, they've mentioned it before. Why are you shaking your head? They mentioned it before that there's going to be Shanghai-based designers and that it's going to be very localized designs. No?
So I haven't seen anything that would indicate it, but I haven't looked for anything. So that could be a blind spot of mine. I don't. We've never seen them do it. We've never seen them do it. They've got 4 factories making Model Y, and the only differences we've seen are so subtle that people don't notice for months. Things like a slightly different cargo area cover, or changes under the skin. It would be interesting to see them do at least different taillights for the different markets. But then you've got an extra layer of validation, an extra layer of everything, an extra whole set of part numbers, and then you've got to keep them straight so when you replace one, they don't mismatch. So I don't see a tremendous benefit in doing that. And I don't know, apart from something very simple like letting them design the hood a little differently, I'm not sure what benefit would be for that.
The benefit would be that the U.S. is a very different market than China, as we all know. In the U.S., there's not much of a demand for sedans. So if you were to create a sedan, you might do it in a different way, a different segmentation, maybe make it sportier, like we're saying. In China, you're competing with lots of other sedans. It's a different kind of need for it. The desire for a smaller X as a 3 versus a larger Y could be something that has bigger demand in China. So, there might be just those reasons, right? Yeah. Well, I don't think so either.
That would make sense for building a whole new vehicle, but they don't want to have different different dyes, different. I mean, at that point, it's a whole different car. And so, you do have to admit, if you've looked at all the different Chinese cars that exist, their design sensibility is their own. It's not, they don't look like European cars, except when they're clearly trying to. They don't look like American cars, except when they're clearly trying to. So I still think when it comes to the forthcoming compact car that we could see, that's where I think each design center is going to have the opportunity to make their voice be heard. And it would be, I would just love to see it if it's just a platform-based system where Shanghai's got one, where Berlin's got one, where Texas or the U.S. generally has one. And then, of course, they would have one of their own in India.
Yeah, that makes sense. When it comes to the second generation car, third generation car, I guess, the compact car, it's built on the new platform. So that's what it's designed for, right? Okay, let's move on to the next major topic, which is China's reached peak gasoline and is a milestone. So Sinopec, the country's top oil refiner, made a forecast, and their forecast is 2 years faster than usual in terms of forecasting when they're going to reach peak gasoline.
Mm-hmm. So I think this was inevitable. A lot of people are reporting it as just peak oil generally, which excludes energy generation. And that's not quite what they're saying. They're saying peak gasoline, which is still a tremendous, tremendous milestone. They're going to, and we've seen this in the works for over 20 years. When I was living in China, they had just started converting all of the taxis to natural gas. And it made a difference in the air quality. And basically, the government stepped in and said, if you want to have a taxi in the city, and by the way, the land area covered by the city, by the municipality is mind-bogglingly huge. It swallows up all the surrounding suburbs. You can't do it unless you make this switch to a cleaner fuel, and a fuel that we happen to have better access to. So that allowed them to make a decree and let it happen. Same thing happened with the shift to EVs. They just said, look, it's happening. It's just happening. We've got a carrot and a stick, and we're going to start with the carrot, and you better move quick because the stick is coming. and everybody did act accordingly, which is why we've seen such a radical shift over really less than 10 years, going from almost none to almost all. And it represents a big tipping point. And a big thing I've also noticed is when I would go to, for example, Shanghai in 2000 to 2004, we would see, I asked a local, why is the sky never blue? I said, I saw this picture and the sky is blue and I've never seen a blue sky. Oh, that's fog. The fog burns off, my friend. That is not fog. And now you can look at the drone footage and see blue skies most days. And even if you look back compared to even when Shanghai broke ground, the air quality has improved in the last 3 years. We don't notice poor air quality as much here because we've taken bigger steps. Our population density is different. Our energy mix is different. But these changes help everyone. Chinese pollution gets picked up by the Gulf Stream and brought over the Gulf Stream, the air currents, and brought over, deposited in Los Angeles. So this is good for everyone. And yeah, it just presents a radical shift. And yeah, and oil has so many great uses. It's used in plastics. It's used in pharmaceuticals. It's used in all kinds of things. Why on earth would you want to set it on fire?
Yeah. Well, let's continue that conversation. So, yeah, we're very happy that China is making moves here. They have been the largest driver of global growth for refined oil products like gas and diesel over the last 2 decades. But because they pushed hard for the EV adoption rates and it's soaring now, the August figure is likely to show plug-in vehicles hitting 38% of new passenger vehicle sales, up from just 6% in 2020. And that's materially denting the fuel demand. So first they talk about 2 and 3 wheel, then they talk about cars, then they talk about trucks. So first they said that 2 and 3 wheeled vehicles is already in structural decline, estimating that 70% of total kilometers traveled by these vehicles already switched over to electric. That's great. Yeah, so the smaller vehicles has already been switched over pretty well. And then fuel demand for cars will be the next to turn. Well over 5% of passenger vehicle fleet is now either battery electric or plug-in hybrid. And so the ICE cars is fast becoming more, is also becoming more efficient. Yep, the ICE cars also become due to the fuel economy targets. Like you said, there's both incentives and there's penalties for ICE cars to be more fuel economy incentive. And then the part that's lagging is the diesel demand for heavier vehicles. That will take a little bit longer, but that shift is also happening. So now it says here that electric fuel cells, battery swapping options have quickly climbed to 12% of light commercial vehicles and 4 to 5% of the medium and heavy. But it's likely to get to 10% by 2025. This is a nice chart showing that the electric truck market in China is slow, but it's growing. Yeah, just like in the US, it's growing. Yeah. It's happening. And again, partly because I guess people need to, companies need to make fuel electric vehicles that are trucks. And so here's another reminder of the peak oil demand. That looks like that it's obviously the COVID here probably, and then it peaked. And then now this is the forecast. It's going to start falling dramatically, very fast as electric vehicles take over. Oh man, this is good news. And then one interesting detail that they pointed out is that the ride-hailing fleet is typically ride-hailing. It's almost always going to be an electric vehicle, or there's a huge incentive for them to switch to electric vehicles. And so 40% of China's ride-hailing vehicles are now electric. Look at that. This is the red in China. The black is global. The green is Europe, and US is poor little blue, even though we've been hearing over and over now that Uber drivers and others are switching over because it costs them so much less and it's economically correct. But look at this, 40% of ride-hailing fleets. So even here, they're already switching to electric. They're going to switch to autonomy. Man, we need to catch up. The US needs to catch up. Thoughts on any of these that we just discussed?
Well, let's start with the 3-wheelers and 2-wheelers. I've seen a lot of comments from bright-eyed optimists who say the future's actually 2 and 3 wheels. That's what we need to do. They're smaller, they're more efficient, and they're just better all around. But when you take an all of the above approach, you get to see which ones actually work. And there's a couple things working against the three-wheelers. One is just simple utility and comfort. So it didn't say that the majority of vehicles are four wheels. It said the majority of travel is on four wheels. They're still selling huge numbers of these two and three wheel vehicles, but for actual miles traveled, people need four wheels. People need cargo. You're not going to cross the country. You're not going to go on a big family road trip on your rickshaw. I mean, it'd be hilarious, but I don't think it's a common use case. And then the next item on that is if you sell 1 million three-wheeled vehicles and 1 million four-wheeled vehicles, which company made more profit? That's the company that's going to grow, the one that made more profit. The four-wheel vehicles have more, at the same margin, have more bottom line dollars with which to grow their operations. And well, yes, but a factory for a bigger vehicle costs more. Yes, but at the end of the day, it's what's winning. On heavy vehicle electrification, they are well on their way. We have BYD buses in Los Angeles, in Wenatchee, Washington. They are already quite effective. There are electric buses throughout Europe. And then you get to, well, okay, so we've got some use cases where it'll work, some where it won't. They're improving every day. And then you get to pickup trucks. And so, well, we're not selling any kind of volume of U.S. electric trucks. No, but there are already electric pickups. I got to see some at Fully Charged in England, and I think the company it was either Great Wall or SAIC, but I think it was SAIC, has a full line of commercial grade electric vehicles, small trucks, full size pickups, and bigger. And they are not waiting for the technology to catch up. They are pushing forward and forcing the technology to catch up. And so it is moving forward in that regard, and it's doing it very quickly. And China is proving that you can actually make it work. For that matter, BYD has port haulers, those little semis that just move cargo containers around within the lot. The other day we saw a video from Pepsi showing off the Tesla Semi. And in one of the clips, the person speaking was standing next to not only the Tesla Semi, but an electric BYD little hauler there, the kind that only has a little cabin for one person, and a yard hauler. The name is escaping me at the moment. But these are already in use and effective.
Hey there, thank you for joining me. If you can, please consider supporting this channel so I can keep it going. It's a lot of work arranging all these amazing interviews. One of the easiest ways is just to click that join button and become a member of the channel. Thank you very much. Let's get brighter. So obviously China is very, very important to Tesla. Let's talk about the relationship that Tesla has with China. I think in an episode we did 2 weeks ago, we reported that there was an airport in China that had a sign that says no Teslas allowed. And
Right.
It turned out that, number one, it was a small regional airport. And number two, that the next day, Tesla China came out with a press release, and they completely kind of shut down any kind of rumor that Tesla's, privacy of the information, all the cameras, it stays within the car. It's default to off, and then you have to default to turn on. It stays within the dongles. And then even their data centers, when you send it to them, it's all within China, and they've got a tremendous relationship with the Chinese government. There was this big YouTube channel, and they did a big deal about this, and people were very concerned about it, that China is saying restricting Teslas specifically across the country. Any kind of thoughts or comments about that, or any consideration about Tesla's relationship with China?
So there are places with restrictions on those kinds of on any car with a dash cam. They're not always strictly enforced because cameras are everywhere and it's impossible to always notice them and verify it. And like you said, it was a small regional airport. The bigger point is there are a lot of people who have very strong negative opinions about China. And when they make videos, just like people who make negative videos about Tesla, there is an audience for it, regardless of fact. I did a big debunk on the EV graveyards.
Right.
BYD is making
Yeah.
millions of cars and just dumping them.
What's the answer
And
to that? Was it the rental, the
well,
ride hailing companies that went bankrupt?
yeah, it's a ride hailing company. And the cars you see in the shot, which by the way, the original video is intentionally obfuscates a lot of the details. The total number of cars was in the low thousands, and the vast majority were gasoline cars. There was only a handful in one corner, and then if you go all the way to the far end of it, you'll see brand new Polestars and Toyotas. This is a holding lot. These vehicles appear stuck in legal limbo, but the lie gets 10 million views and the
Yeah.
correction gets 10,000 views.
Nice.
And so there's two coalescing factors there. One is these people want their clicks. That's how they get paid. And they're feeding off anti-China sentiment. And if you dislike something they're doing, focus on that. If you have to make stuff up, you've already lost. And then add to that the people who make a living out of being anti-Tesla. So now you've got anti-China and anti-Tesla in one story. Bob, we're going to be rich. And they've done very well. So
How do we
you always
become
have to
rich,
consider
right?
the
Can we
source.
we just report the news?
Well, first we sell our souls and then we lie to everyone and make people dumber on purpose and give them advice that will ruin them financially. That's what they're doing.
Well, some people
I
think
just
that we
can't do
are
it.
we're shills for Tesla, and they think that we're promoting Tesla. I try to to just report the news, with definitely a slant
I'd
towards
love to be a
positive.
Tesla shill. I'd love to be a Tesla
Why
shill.
do you
They
say
don't
that?
know I exist. Well, I just mean I'd like to. I'd like them to know that I am interested in participating in an event in the future, and rather than going 9 different times to 9 different ones, to only get in at the last one as a +1. But the good news is I have a firsthand understanding of how security removes people from locations. You can't learn that online. You have to experience it yourself.
Well, there's a whole story about how I got into Giga Texas, but also I got 50 plus people into Giga Texas. I was the guy that did that, so that's a little claim to fame. But I think at
Yeah,
that point,
yeah,
that was
yeah.
not
You're the
something that.
reason security's so tight.
No. But at that point, they weren't not worried about security at that
Yeah,
point. They had actually
yeah,
said
yeah.
that they were lax about it. But okay, so everything's looking good, right? Giga Shanghai, Tesla in Shanghai. We just reported news that things are the production numbers and the delivery numbers specifically are still pretty strong. Highland's coming up very soon. Cybertruck. Cybertruck's not going to show up in China, right? That's going to be later.
Uh, I haven't heard any plans about imminent export. The best is there is a gentleman on X with the handle Kura Cars who will, as soon as humanly possible, fly up there and get one and bring it to South America. But we shall see how that goes.
All right. Well, we're in August 30th now. We're heading into September. We're getting very close to both the Tesla Highland announcement and the Cybertruck announcement. That's coming very soon. So, thank you very much, Brian. Appreciate this. And we'll
Pleasure as always.
great. Thanks.